and he worked out the best way that he was familiar with to make things happen for himself. You know why? Because he bypassed the ego. The ego said, I'm embarrassed. I can't, he's Imam Bilal. I can't ask Imam Bilal. No, he bypassed all of that and he went straight to the moral and rational excellence. He said, I need this. And you have this. And 1 and 1 equals 2 in my brain. I'm going to get this. Not time for questions and answers. I didn't mean to open it up like that. I just wanted to say that all praise is due to Allah and His angels are in full control. All right, let's get back to the board. So we spoke about the reptilian brain. Did we put that on the board? Okay. Put it above mammalian. We can erase some of that. Yeah. Sometimes it gets confusing when too much information is in the same space.
Reptilian?
Yeah. No, here's what we do. We're going to erase what's up there, up to the title. Is that okay? Then on top of mammalian, put reptilian. R-E-P-T-I-L-I-A-N. Then, yes, where are you? R-E-P. Yeah. Right. Yes, P. Just stick a P in there. Mm-hmm. That's all right.
Thank you.
Yes. Then beneath that, put mammalian again. M-A-M-M-A-L-I-A-N. Then beneath that, put neocortex. And then in brackets, right next to it, put frontal lobe. F-R-O-N-T-A-L-L-O-B-E in brackets. And I promise not to bother you again until I need you. And I'm thankful to you. I'm thankful to Allah for you.
Say this in parentheses again.
Yes. In parentheses, it's frontal lobe. F-R-O-N-T-A-L, lobe, L-O-B-E.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. That's like my mother sitting there. That's how she was with me. Sister Ruth and her husband, Brother Sabur. And somebody in this room needs to make sure that every time I'm here that they know about it. I don't need to say anything else, do I? All right, let's continue. You see the word ego, E-G-O? There are people who have developed that as an acronym now for edging God out. Easing, edging, whatever the word is for E, you know the telephone line. Once you keep sending it down, it's going to change. But it essentially carries the same message. So in those 3 words for that acronym, they have accurately described the issue, the problems and the concerns related to the human ego. Ego is thinking that you can do this yourself. That's Iblis's problem. He was edging God out. But in edging God out, the Creator, he was at the same time edging out the excellence in his own potential. Because the ego will not allow you to reach your full human development as an intellectual being. The ego will keep you stuck on the mammalian or the reptilian level of your brain's growth and development. The ego will not allow you to come into the full expression of what your neocortex has to offer. Now I'm going to show you something. If you draw a line from the reptilian across, I want you to put the word, these are Arabic terms now from the Quran. Ready to write? I need you. Put the word, this is transliterated with English letters. This is not, I'm not asking her to write in Arabic. Ins. I-N-S. Draw it as big as you can draw it. Draw a line across from mammalian and put the word nas. N-A. Make it double A so you know how to pronounce it. Nas. N-A-A-S. And from the neocortex frontal lobe, I want you to put the word inside. Give it two A's. I-N-S-A-A-N. Now we're going to explore the connections. Thank you. That's good. Now we're going to explore the connections with the help of Allah between these modern ideas in science, especially in those areas of what is now being called quantum science, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, give it whatever name you want. Science has moved into the 21st century. Alhamdulillah. But again, I'm going to show you the connections that are made for us as thinking Muslims. Free thinking, free for us means you think within the paradigms allowed you by Allah. It doesn't mean you're allowed to just go all over the place with your brain. It means that you're not stuck by people who would like to see you stuck. Right? You're a free thinker. These are connections that are going to make it much more easy for you when you read the Quran to make connections that will lead you into modern solutions for things. Using what Allah gave you without thinking that it's relegated to 1400 years ago necessarily. The Quran is a timeless scripture. The Quran is not stuck in the deserts of Saudi Arabia. The Quran is not a book that only the Arabs are supposed to enjoy and benefit from. The Quran is a book that took the ancient Arab out of his ancient paradigm of thinking and brought him into the modern and enlightenment in the sciences, especially, and in the human sciences also. Treatment of people, proper adab, proper behavior, proper courtesy, proper etiquette, all of the things that were lacking in this group of people were introduced in many cases for the first time because they had never received scripture before. For the first time, these concepts were being introduced. And in less than 23 years, the message of Al-Islam, as it was delivered by Muhammad the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was able to reach every nook and cranny of the human being's life and existence. Even down to how he used the restroom. Now that's really minding somebody's business. In the good sense. Because you got people who don't know. People come from primitive life, savage life in some cases. You had doctors in the West, in Europe, who would leave the table of a woman who they just delivered a baby from. And hands still dripping with blood. Huh? His doctor's out, his white smock, still bloodstained. Well, let me give you a better picture. He would have just left a cadaver doing an autopsy. Hands still dripping with that blood. And go straight from there to deliver a baby without washing his hands. Now that's primitive. But in his mind, he was trained to think that the blood was like an honor. You know, they associate blood and honor, even in the hadiths. They're both sacred, right? His property, his blood, and his honor. They're connected. So these people were taught that the blood represented some type of, if you had blood on you, you were a conqueror, you were a warrior, or you were a doctor who's like a warrior, saving people's lives, delivering faith, bringing new life into the world. So he saw it as a badge of honor to carry the blood, not knowing that this blood was full of germs, negative germs, and diseases that eventually caused things like the bubonic plague in Europe. Something that probably could have been solved if people had been taught how to wash their hands. Because you know, as they say now, how germs spread from the hands, right? Take a swab of that doorknob and go put it under a microscope, and you'll see how merciful Allah is to all of us. That we're still here living and breathing and disease-free, relatively speaking. But these people didn't know until Muslims taught them. Mostly during the period that we call the Crusades. Can you imagine the people? Is that recording in here? Somebody's cell phone or something?
Outside the door.
Okay, praise be to Allah. Can you imagine people who are battling other people? Europeans in this case that have encroached upon the Muslims who were not doing anything to them, just like in the situation of Palestine. The Palestinians weren't doing anything to the Israelis that came from another land and invaded their land. They were actually helped by the Palestinians and given refuge against it from the Germans. And all of a sudden the evil twin appears. But we won't go into that today. We want to stay nice today. But that's a part of the history and the struggle that we're dealing with. Justice is justice. If it had been opposite, we'd be on the Israeli side. But that just doesn't happen to be the situation. So people are fighting other people, and within the context of that fighting, time is made to observe the other side. And the Europeans observed, the Christian Europeans, observed that the Muslims came to battle with all that white and all that clean, groomed, mustaches groomed, beards nice and white or red or whatever the colors were that they were coming to battle with. Washing up 5 times a day at least. They saw them in the background making salat while the front line was fighting. Who are these people? And how do they stay so clean? They had the human curiosity demanded that they ask those people, how do you do this? And it was the introduction of hygiene to the Europeans by the Muslims, to the Christian Europeans, by the Muslims, that is responsible for hygiene being promoted all over the Western world today, Europe and America. That's what's responsible for the mandate on the part of the American doctors to wash their hands in between patients. They learned that, they're telling you in their books, we learned that from Muslim interaction with Muslims during the Crusades. And what I'm telling you is in books. So do not play short what Allah gave us. Because something wonderful is about to happen to this world that involves us. And if you don't know it involves you, you'll be sitting back as a spectator when you should be a performer. Allah didn't do all this for you to sit back and be a spectator. The spectators are the ones He's taking it from. He says He rotates His kingdom. He said, and if you don't get with the program, so to speak, He'll give it to another people. And He will love them as they love Him. Etc. So in the Quran there are different terms for human. Different terms for what in every case is translated as man. So those of us who have not put in enough time to learn basic Arabiya, in other words, if you don't know what Arabiya is, I'm talking to you. It's Arabic. And I'm not scolding you. We've entered into a new era. You stepped through a new portal when you came into this language right here. And Allah chose you to be here right now. Now, it doesn't mean you have to become a proficient linguist in the Arabic language or any other language. It means that you have to do what James Brown did in his lyric. He said, use what you got to get what you want. So you know English. Allah sent you somebody who can make connections into the Arabic in English so that when you go to the Arabic, you'll feel more comfortable. You won't feel as threatened. Like, I can't learn this. What is this? If I show you that ins and nas and insan are concepts that you can handle, then when you go into the Quran and begin to read them, you will more than likely begin to make connections that people who speak fluent Arabic never make. But if you don't know Arabic, when you read in English, and God created man in the most excellent mold, and say to them that I am a man, I am a mortal man just like you. And you keep reading these translations that say man, but not realizing that Allah is using different words to describe that man, then you're losing out because you're not getting the fullness of the meaning. You don't even know what Allah is talking to in you. All of these different dispositions for man are in you and me. But what part of Allah is he addressing when he says An-Nisa, talking to the women? What's the difference between An-Nisa and Al-Untha? Both of them mean women or female. If she don't know, then how you know what is he trying to say to you? Bashir. Tell them I'm a Bashir just like them. Well, maybe in some other part of your human development, you're not like the Prophet. Maybe you're only like him as a Bashir. He didn't use any other word. Dhakar, male. Untha, female. Dhakarat, female thinker. Untha, feeler. One who is inclined more to sensitivities, inner sensitivities. Dhakar, one who is inclined to think. It's where the English world gets the word think from. Dhakar. They take away and add letters in the travel of that word or of that language, and by the time you look at them, you can't find the connections. But I'm telling you, pick up what it is called an etymology dictionary. E-T-Y, thank you, M-O-L-O-G-Y, dictionary. E-T-Y, M-O-N-O, am I spelling this right? Pardon me. Yes, thank you. E-T-Y, M-O-L-O-G-Y. And put this website so they can find the best one that I found online. You ready?
Yes.
E-T-Y M-O-N O-N L-I yeah. L-I-N-E. It's supposed to be in other words, etymology online, but they condensed it. I have to look at it before I can. E-T-Y-M-O-N-L-I-N-E. Am I correct? Yeah. Listen. Okay, E-T-Y-M online. That's correct. Okay, so that's right. Make the E small e.
Small.
The etymology in the beginning. No, in the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah. .com. www.etymononline.com. That's the best etymology online dictionary. A matter of fact, Naeem, go to that site and go to the word man. You there? Okay. Now listen very carefully to the definition of man as it is given in the etymology dictionary. I'm going to hand the microphone over to one of our fellow instructors, Naeem Rahman.
Man, human being, person, from the German language. So you have...
Just go to the essentials.
Man, male, sometimes connected to the root men, to think, and see mind as a reference to understand man. Which would make the ground sense of man one who has intelligence.
That's good enough. He said the battery died right after he said that. All right. So you heard that definition? So when Imam Muhammad said man means mind, was he lying? No, he was just telling you something you didn't know. He was using etymology. You were using Webster. So while you were being caught in the web of Webster's definitions, he was extracting jewels out of the mine called etymology. All right. There's more to go. You all right? Okay. So follow this. All right. We're going to revisit the Arabic. I'm going to finish giving you the connections with these portions of the brain called the triune brain. The reptilian part of your brain is primarily responsible for what is called fight or flight. Write that down. Fight or flight. This is the part of the brain that developed as a protection for the life form. When the life form was in its reptilian stage of development, of human development, we're talking about. It was there and developed to answer the response to an emergency situation. That reptilian brain is not an evil thing. It is a God-created thing. Allah created it. And although you operate now with a neocortex and a mammalian brain, your reptilian brain is still in operation for situations that occur that are of an emergency nature. Somebody runs in the room, opens the door with a machete, a machine gun. The priority is not to keep the class going. That would be your neocortex's response. Hey, I have to keep feeding this moral and rational thing he's talking about. That machete is going to have to wait. No. Allah put something in your psyche that says emergency, priority, right? Danger, danger, Will Robinson, right? And if you think you can overcome it, then you fight it. If you think you can't overcome it, then you get in flight. You get away from it. You flee. So fight or flight is inherent in the nature of the part of the brain that we call reptilian. Because that's how reptiles operate. If the reptile believes that it can overcome another animal, another thing, it will subdue it. But if it's nature, it's instincts. You see where they get these words? If its instincts tell it, the decision has to be a split-second decision. A split-second decision does not come from the moral and rational thinking in the human brain. It comes from the instinctive nature in the human brain. You get up out of there. That is your ins. All right? Moving up the stages or stairs of evolution, you have the mammal that appeared. Allah said He created all life out of the water, from the water. So as that life appeared, it was originally amoeba and all of whatever came out of there. And then they say the reptiles began to dominate the land. Correct? People who know better than me just correct me, because my science is not always 100%. But I try not to speak on it unless I believe it's 100%. That's how we learn. Correct each other. Now, the mammals began to appear. So this is after the cold-blooded creatures have already dominated. They call them in history dinosaurs. They're just big reptiles. Right? And then those flying creatures and so forth, and the mammoth, the woolly mammoth and all that began to appear. Mammoth, mammal. And these were creatures that were born again from the interior, which naturally made them warm-blooded creatures. We talked about the warmth during the Jummah in the word ham. Alright? Mammals began to appear. You remember in the Bible story of Cain and Abel? It says that 2 sacrifices were brought to God. One was accepted and the other was rejected. The one that Cain brought was rejected by God. He brought the fruit of the ground. The other that was presented by his brother Abel was called the fruit of the womb. W-O-M-B. Right? So one brought the material sciences, the ground. That's where you get the sciences, from studying the ground, the nature of created matter. But his brother brought the fruit of the womb, and family life develops from the womb. The warmth that it takes to be able to recognize that this being that just left my body needs my care and consideration for some time. So I'm going to embrace this new creature that God blessed me to give birth to. That's mama talking. And daddy, I'm going to go out and make sure I do all of the things necessary to bring home those items and those foods, that food stuff, and the education, the knowledge from talking to people out there to improve upon this family life. I see my wife, she doesn't have the physiology that supports her being able to give birth and be out there to bring home everything that the home needs. So common sense tells me, that's God talking to the human being. Common sense tells me that I'm the one to do those things, and I'm the one who has been freed as a blessing by God. And what if both of them had to share pregnancy? Allah can do whatever He wants. Let's say she carried it and he had to give birth, somehow transfer to him, and he experienced the pains as she's giving birth, and he's stuck at home. And all the things that they need for that little life, none of them can get it. That's Allah's mercy that He freed one guy up. Not to go out there and be a knucklehead. Not to go out there and watch the football game while she's in labor. He freed that knucklehead up so he can go out there and do that which would take the stigma off of his knucklehead status. Because he starts out as a knucklehead. And I can't understand to this day people who believe that God gave that male knucklehead permission to beat up his wife if he don't like what she did or said or whatever. That's another story. We're going to come back for a whole weekend of beating the women. That subject. That might be my first book. Because I know if I was a woman and I saw a book that said beating the women, is that really in the Quran as a subtitle? I'm getting that. I might have to beat him up with the book. How can you change the Quran? Allah says we have permission. It's all over the internet. Just type beating the women in the internet and watch all of these sites come up. Brothers in Saudi and Pakistan, they got television shows, talking about trying to rationalize that the woman is an inferior creature. Allah created the woman to be inferior. She has to acquiesce to our intelligence. Allah created the man as the Khalifa, which He reduced to Khalif because He didn't want you to see that feminine ending. He changed the Quran in His translation to say Allah created us from one soul and from Him His mate. When Allah says min zawjaha, from her mate. If you're going to give it gender, come all the way with it. Min nafsin wahida, that's a feminine ending. One feminine soul. How's that for defeating sexism and chauvinism in the world? From people who want to make Muslims seem like we hate women. They make it seem like that because we have bought into the lie and have used Christian and Judaic interpretations of Scripture to influence what Allah said in His Scripture, the Quran. So you're just getting reworked Judaism and Christianity in its worst, what do they call that? When something appears. I forget the word. They got some fancy word for it. Incarnation. In its worst incarnation. The best of Judaism and Christianity is in the Quran. Preserved. They can be Jews and Christians till the judgment and still follow the Quran. Say that the Quran, and rabbis are doing that now. There's some rabbis who are saying, we follow the Quran, but we're Jewish. And our prophet is Musa, alayhi salam. And very soon you're going to see Christians saying, we follow the Quran, but our prophet is Isa. it's going to come back to its default setting. Because a lie cannot live forever. Alhamdulillah. Alrighty. So the mammal appears. Now, here's the major distinction between mammal and reptile. You ready for this? The mammal develops sufficient memory. See the connections in the words? Mammals have memory. I know because my cat does certain things, and if I punish that cat remembers that. You see the cat flinch when they do the same thing twice. Yeah, they have genetic memory also. But we're talking now about the simple forms of memory that the average human brain contains. They call it short-term, right? They got 3 different terms for it because this world is based on Trinity concepts. You find out later that there are many kinds of memory. They try to squeeze them into those 3 frameworks because this world is based on Trinitarian concepts. It was built by Christian thinkers. Now, memory. The lizard or the reptile, you could take a baby turtle away from a mother turtle and she apparently cares not. I say apparently because I know the mother nature is still there. But the way Allah designed the picture language of that event to speak to the human brain, right, suggests that there's no emotionality connected to a missing child. When you think about these attributes of the reptile versus the mammalian, you'll understand something. That the schemers of this world have been subtly regressing human intelligence. Subtly. During slavery, they did not allow us to operate based on our neocortex. We could not make moral and rational decisions for ourselves, but we were very nice to each other. And that behavior is apparent still to a great degree in the South more than in the North. Where in the South, if you pass by, ma'am, Miss whoever, and didn't speak, we spoke about this, man, she probably beat you and would have permission to beat you. Or at least scream at you, scold you, reprimand you, discipline you. If she saw you doing something severe, she could even grab you by your ear and say, no, I'm taking you home to your mother. You take a child home to his mother like this now, you'll get beat up by the mother. Get your hands off my child, you beat. But he just punched a little boy in the face for nothing. I don't care, that's my child. I disciplined my child. Get your whatever blankety break hands off my child. What? The time when the policeman would bring you home if you did something. He didn't bring you to jail. He brought you to your mother because he knew that was the worst punishment. Miss Daisy, your son's been messing up and and hollering on the corner. And Joseph, get upstairs. Thank you, Officer Bob. Yes, you have a good day. You tell Captain Wilson that we'll be at the meeting later this week. Joseph, get upstairs. Yes, Mom. He knew what was coming. Lay that child out like she's about to kill him. And leave some whelps for him to remember her by. But it wasn't called child abuse back then. Now it's called the basis that your child needs in order to divorce you. They let you divorce your parents now. The 13-year-old brat. Mother said something he didn't like. I'll take you to court. Now, that's how they've taught our children. What are they teaching our children to do? Regress from mammalian warmth to reptilian doesn't matter. I'm going to either fight you because I believe I can beat you, Daddy, Mommy, or I'm going to get the hell away from you. I'll become an emancipated minor. Now, that doesn't say that there are parents who are not abusive in the real sense of the word, because everybody's been made crazy. But it is saying that the natural parent with natural intelligence no longer has a platform to stand on in order to promote what is morally and rationally right in this society anymore. So we have to design those modes of operation and relationships with our children ourselves based on what? The best knowledge, al-Qur'an. Gang life in the USA is reptilian behavior. I don't know if I need to say anymore. It's fight or flight. It's emergency brain activity. And what you have to understand is that if you keep switching those switches off enough. Now I'm going to give you some quantum physics to back up what I'm saying. You ready, Naini? If you keep, those are switches in the brain that Allah has designed to respond to certain modes of thinking and behavior that the environment, the culture signals. Allah gave you security guards at every station to handle the emergency, to handle the interactions, the social interactions, and to handle the need for more and better information in the brain. That's those three levels. But if they lock our youth into the reptilian mode of thinking, and if they do it enough, make it a habit, then that becomes that child's primary mode of operation or modus operandi. So you're not really talking to your child when you're reprimanding them. You're talking to a reptile. And then there are some cases where the child is totally human in his or her sensitivities. And the parent is a reptile. Why? Because they have been operating in this emergency state. Everything is always wrong. Everything is always a cliffhanger for them. Children come into the house and feel so intimidated. Hate to come home. Because they know that mother, that father is going to be on edge about something that they were not responsible for. So they go to other children's homes and experience the warmth and the mammalian behavior of their friends' mother and father. It works both ways. It's not the children are guilty and the parents are. They designed it so that whoever it catches is who it catches. It's 4:30. May I have your permission to continue? Alhamdulillah. So again, if they train our brains to switch off the neocortex thinking, moral and rational thinking, and then to switch off the emotionality. Meaning, yes sir, thank you sir. Assalamu alaikum. That's my friend back there, Andrew. Give him a takbir. Oh my God. That's right. He say he can't see, but I know he can see. I've been got. Yeah, you'd be surprised the help that Allah is sending us. Don't play anybody down. Age-wise, gender-wise, color-wise, ethnic group-wise. This has been a weekend of surprises. Had a Pakistani man in here Friday. More fervent about W.D. Muhammad and preserving his language than most of us. Yeah. I didn't even include myself in that because I wanted you to feel the impact. I know there are genuine people in here who love his language and want to see it promoted, but I'm talking about somebody who's active on a daily basis promoting his logic and was a close and dear friend and confidant of his. And it has nothing to do with what country he was born in. And Allah is conditioning us to speak to people around the globe, and it will have nothing to do with what country they were born in. You will be speaking to people who say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and you will be designing a new paragram for those who will be soon saying La ilaha illallah Musa Rasulullah, Isa Rasulullah. See, that's new. It's been done, and it's perfectly Quranic, And in accord with the sayings of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said there will be Muslims, Christians, and Jews up until the judgment into the Jannah. But our community, he prayed that our community would be in the majority. That's solid hadith. We are blessed. So, they have trained many of us to be reptiles in human form. In terms of how we think. In terms of how we think. Everything is always an emergency. Everybody's always against me. Huh? What does Allah say in the Quran? They think that every cry is against them. Allah speaking to the reptilian. See, when you know these things, you can make the connections in the Quran. Allah said He created you to stand on 2. He said He created some to stand on 4. He ain't just talking about creatures He created, talking about you and your intellect are a simple mammal. He calls us cattle in Surah 6. Al-An'am. He describes the people as cattle. And even worse, right? He said at least cattle respond to calls and cries. What's wrong with the human? An emergency break out for the human. Man, what happened? I heard a gunshot. Don't know, man. Where'd that come from? Around the corner, man. The average intelligence in a person would say, let me get as far away from this danger as I can get. But brother man, he picked up his 3-year-old son and rushed to the danger. With the possibility, and it's happened many times, of a young innocent person being shot, maimed, or killed. Because he just got to have, they conditioned us like that. We got to have excitement. They conditioned the brain for nothing but excitement. Media has done that intentionally. To stimulate the brain so that if it's not exciting, I don't want anything to do with it. And that's why children are dropping out of school, because it's not exciting. And Allah has blessed us with a language in what I'm telling you that not only educates and informs, but it's also exciting. This is exciting. That's why we can do it for hours. This is better than SpongeBob SquarePants and his homosexual group of cartoon characters. Encouraging homosexuality subliminally. Encouraging disrespect for parents subliminally. The great elimination, Imam Muhammad called it. So we have a language. Listen to this. Allah has gifted us now because of Imam Muhammad's diligence. And I don't point to him as just an individual. This is not hero worship. This is the acknowledgement. And if you can't come this far to acknowledge what Allah gave you, you don't need to even be here. This is just the acknowledgement. This is not putting him up as a prophet or nothing like that. This is better than saying he was a prophet. It's saying he was a human being like me. He wasn't receiving any revelation or nothing. Just like I was sitting in my living room, I wasn't receiving any revelation, but look at the news that I have for you. You don't have to be a prophet. That's over. All you have to do is drink from the well in order to be well. Visit El Kawthar, the abundance that was already established 1400 years ago. We got 1400 years ago of incremental wealth that has been built in terms of knowledge and science. Go into that bank, open up that vault. That's free money for the Muslim and for the human, generally speaking. And they've done it. That's how they built this world. You wouldn't have lights on in here if it wasn't for Al-Islam. You wouldn't have running water if it wasn't for the progress that Muslims made in Spain and that circled Europe and now came into America by way of Europe. You wouldn't have decent clothes to wear. You wouldn't be smelling good, looking good, if it wasn't for Deen al-Islam. So we have knowledge now that can reactivate the switches that were systematically turned off by a systematic devil. He operates through systems, just like the good people are supposed to. He operates through the systems of psychology, commercialism, sociology, and all of the other artificial systems that he set up to be the overseers of the masses of people. Allah has given us the keys in this language that has grown out of the root of what Imam Muhammad was blessed to establish, and even what his father and mother and past community was able to establish. Minus the shirk. I'm going to repeat that. Allah is blessing us to benefit from even the teachings of Elijah Muhammad by showing us and giving us enough sense to divorce his shirk work from the equation. There are many things in life that grow in a way that prior to their maturity, they're not good for you to eat. Something has to fall off sometimes for that food to become halal, or else it becomes poison. There are some plants that carry poisons. But the scientist in you is supposed to develop a way to get the good stuff and get around the poison. Until Allah put you in an environment where you can get totally halal, then you don't go to the poison. And what I just told you is in the Quran. You're in an environment where there's nothing but khinzir. What's khinzir? Khinzir. What does that word mean? Say it loud. Pork. Pig product. What does Allah say? You're in a situation of starvation or where you need it to get to the next point? He said, take a little bit of it, but not enough to make it a habit. Like you really like it. Eat it like you, but I gotta stay alive, because the priority is your life. That's what Allah is telling you. I want you here. This is a test for you. Don't eat this like it's Thanksgiving dinner. Just take a bite, feel it in your belly, move on. Until that's what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had to do. Where were all these people who cry bid'ah now and kufar? Where were they when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was just beginning to struggle in the 1930s, and in the 1920s, going into the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, where were they? Where were the bid'ah people? The people who cried innovation and kufar. Elijah Muhammad is a kafir. How was he a kafir when he had nothing else to eat? The Ahmadiyya had to come here and feed him. That's what W.D. Farad was. From the community called Ahmadi, Anjuman, in the area that is now Pakistan. Formerly an area in India called the Punjab, still called the Punjab. Ahmadiyyas had to come here. And even after he got started, even before he got started, the Ahmadiyyas were in the black communities teaching Islam. And it was the Ahmadiyyas who converted the first American-born white man, quote unquote, called Alexander Russell Webb. Look it up on the web. And he was a part of an organization, major religious fraternity organization, that all these years later, Imam Muhammad became the president of. How about that? How about that? World Conference on Religion and Peace. Imam Muhammad was one of the world presidents over that organization. Well, Alexander Russell Webb began that. He began with that organization in the probably even before the 20s. I believe it was during the early 20s or maybe late, part of the first decade of the 20th century. So when you don't know, you don't know. But I'm saying this so that people will stop criticizing. I hope they hear this, so that they will stop unnecessarily criticizing Allah's work. That's what this is about. And you need to feel good about your history and not feel intimidated by people who don't understand our history. Because our history is their history also. And they should appreciate it. You don't have to have his sayings on your wall for you to appreciate the development. It's not necessary. But if it works for you, use it. The discipline in those children from those days, I wish we had that back. Without the shirk. Without saluting W.D. Muhammad's, W.F. Muhammad, W. Farad Muhammad, without saluting his total body of knowledge. Now I'm going to tell you something that's connected to the ego that's related to what Farad said. Look at the word ego. E-G-O. Edging God out, right? Well, that was his plan also. But he wanted to edge out the God that the white world had established in your brain. And when he used symbolic terminology, he was not using that terminology in the literal ways that people ended up accepting it. He was using a process of gradualism, just as he found our prophet using in the deserts of Mecca and Medina. Mecca, the desert of Mecca, and the city of Medina, the blessed city of Medina. The prophet Allah used gradualism in the Quran. Even when it came to people staying away from alcohol and intoxicants, other intoxicants. Right? He said, all right, you don't have to give up crack cocaine, but you can't come to the masjid high. You see how Allah does? He's a nurturer. He's an evolver. He's not an instant presto fiat creator. Everything he brings into being has to grow, evolve, and develop. And if nobody came to our help, to our aid, as people who have been captured by our strange people from another place, brought across thousands of miles of water to a land that they could not even recognize, east from west, from north, from south. And the people who had this book memorized. That was just 500, 400 something years ago. This had been here for 1,000 years almost. And there were people among them who knew we were here and wanted to do something but couldn't. Because they understood that some of us, many of us, were taken from Muslim lands. Not just land that worshiped gods of animism and these other things that they accused the Africans of. So we have to take the time to think about these things. This is a part of the curriculum. The information that we need to pass down to our children so they will stop thinking that what we have is an inferior product. And because we can't do what all of the other children do in the play yard and play these games, tag and back and forth with the little boys and the little girls, and the little boys ending up putting their arms around the little girls and kissing them in public and all this kind of crazy foolishness, we got to have some anecdotes for that. We can't just say that's wrong. It looks right. It looks fun. It looks like they really enjoying life. And look at me, stuck with a Pima. I love this long dress. I'm tripping over it going up the school steps. They got on their tight jeans. They doing their thing. Their hair blowing in the wind. They got boyfriends. They got girlfriends. I don't like this Islam thing. They're not saying that here. They're saying that here, in the back of the head, in the subconscious. And your subconscious mind does not have to be in agreement with your conscious thoughts. Consciously, la ilaha illallah. Subconsciously, I wish I could do what they're doing. I wish I could look like Britney Spears just once. Give me some tight jeans. And they don't know that the inventor of tight jeans was saying something about your genetics. Jeans used to be loose. Now they got something called skinny jeans because they're promoting something based on the switch that is occurring in your genetics that they are bringing about. They are orchestrating a switch of how the genes operate, how your genetics operate. So, tight means to constrict. So if they're making your genes, Geans, tight, it means they're making your Genes tighter. And they're squeezing something out of it that should be maintained in it. And the pressure of what is squeezing them is actually introducing a new thing into the genes that is not a fitra product of the genes. Big topic, right, Imam Benjamin? That's why we got to do this every month. And I've given you enough to remake the world 10 times at least. At least the academic world. They can't fight this. There's no weapon on earth that could fight what we're talking about right now. If you can put it in any school, in anybody's ear. I told you the mayor of Wilmington, Delaware, heard a little bit of this and said, he's going to be in your town for 3 days. I got to come out and greet him myself. He wasn't almost, he's a Christian. But he's an intelligent Christian. But you got Muslims who know I'm here and won't come out because it's Sunday. What kind of Christian stuff is that? I'm not talking against Christian. I'm just saying we've been trained to think Sunday is the day off. That's from church days. It's the day they're supposed to worship Jesus. I can't go out, be with Muslim. That's a Muslim talking in the back of his head. But if you keep doing things in the back of the head that don't agree with what you're putting in the front of the head, you're creating a friction that's going to eventually wear you out. You'll be stressed out and don't know it. Don't know why. Beautiful teachings. Ego. Ego is a play on the word egg. EGG. You've heard of a fragile ego? That's what they're referring to. The fragility of the egg. Now when you crack that fragile, that's what, be careful with the egg. You go shopping, you might have 13 bags. But you want to put those eggs in a separate bag and put it up under the arm of a responsible person. Because it's fragile. Some of them are marked fragile. But that's your ego being spoken about by the manipulators, the language manipulators. And eggs used to be brown. You see these natural eggs they come up with? They're not white. The shell, they're not white. They're brown. And brown in religious language has a meaning, and white has a meaning. And they both refer to the nature and activity in your intellect, in your ego, in your intellect. The ego itself needs to be educated. And brown is the color that is represented in the idea of learning. There's a very old phrase that you can't find in the dictionary that was introduced to us by Imam Muhammad. I found it once and forgot where I found it and never saw it again as much as I looked for it. It's called the brown study. That is intense study. All right? But these eggs, yes ma'am?
It's in the dictionary. It's in a dictionary.
It's got to be in some dictionary. It was in a dictionary when I found it. But they morphed these dictionaries so often and morphed it right out. Because if they feel it's not useful anymore, they take it out and they put new definitions in there. But I do remember seeing it in a very early or old dictionary. They have, if you'd be surprised at the word nigger in the dictionaries from the 1800s. It wasn't what you think. You're not going to see in there what we know to be a nigger. You know what you're going to see? This is just a little aside. You're going to see that it says a tool. It's a tool that is used in the same way that what we call now a vice is used. Where you put something that you want to work on in it and you screw it tight and then you work on that thing. But that's still what a nigger is if you understand the abstract. That's what they're doing to these niggas every day. So we have to transform these niggas. We got to take them out of the vice. You know what vice is? That's crime and filth, all that, right? We got to take them out of, we have to loosen the grip. But if you don't know how to appeal to the one who has the grip, you won't make progress. And that's why I said what I'm saying loosens the grip. They can't handle what I'm saying if they were to hear it. They could only submit or get away, fight or flight. They can't fight it, they gotta flee. That's what Allah tells you in the Quran about Shaitan when he hears the adhan. It ain't just no physical adhan. We call the adhan, and the biggest Shaitan in the musalla sitting right there listening to you. He ain't running nowhere, she ain't going nowhere. These are not fairy tales in these hadiths. These are scientific principles contained in simple language that you and your children can understand. Because Allah was not speaking above your head when He established the Sunnah and the reports of the Prophet, the legitimate reports of our Prophet. Huh? All right. So the ego is the egg. You break that egg open, you have something that looks like the sun looking at you. That yellow ball, they call it yolk. Right? Yolk. Y-O-L-K. And then you have what's left called the egg white. And there are some people who want to eat better. They take out the yolk and they eat the egg white. All of that is satire, and they don't know it. It doesn't mean it's bad for you to do it. It means that they use that and make it popular to speak their satire. The yellow represents the dawning of enlightenment in your intellect. And that enlightenment is causing you to be cautious. So yellow came to represent a color that means caution in the intellect. Just like when the light turns yellow, you see the connection, right? Slow down. Another car might be coming across you. Caution. Means other things, but it primarily carries the connotation of being cautious. The egg white represents purity in the intellect. But when they cause the shell of the egg to be white also, that white then represents false purity. So they're talking about, and to get your best description of what I'm talking about, just study the historical European American races. He thought he was pure. He thought he was in God's family. That's how pure he thought he was. Jesus looked like me. Mary looked like me. Angels looked like me. Even the pictures that they had of so-called God with the big beard looked like my granddaddy. So I'm better than thee. I'm better than him. Sound familiar? False purity. And false caution. Be careful of those niggers. Especially the bucks. Don't let your women's around them big old Negro bucks. Unnatural caution against people. You brought us here. Now I'm your worst enemy. Let me go home. Keep me here. Put me in the house. Not worried about your wife. I got my own women. Give me a broom to jump. I don't want this. This world is, I don't even know how I got here. Woke up one morning in a shed, in a shack, shackled in some cases. And you whispering stuff about me being, wanting to chase your women. You didn't even think that much about your women. I'm just giving you historical facts. The European man who came here and established the system of slavery in the New World did not care that much about his women to protect them in the way that he said he was trying to protect them against us. He was too busy chasing our women. Had his women all locked up. Literally locked up. Had to get a physical key to have a relationship with her. He didn't trust her that much. She left him. She had to physically put a lock on her. that you had. They call it chastity belt. What kind of stuff is that? See, this mind from another place, from a natural fitra-based place, didn't understand that. I'm going to wrap this up, inshallah, in the next 10 minutes. But the mind didn't understand that kind of behavior. It's too unnatural for us. So, ego is involving false caution and false purity. So when W.D. Farad said that the white man is the devil, I don't believe he was referring to white skin. He was close to that himself. I believe he was referring to the whiteness that he understood in the human ego. Because he was from a land in India where the ideas connected to this kind of symbolism were prevalent. India has the highest levels of mysticism and symbolism on earth. Chakra systems, Kundalini systems, all kind of systems that when you study the symbolism in those systems, it equals what I'm telling you now about white and brown and all of these other ideas. Wheels upon wheels, that's your chakra system. Your energy centers. Mother planes, he called them. 24 scientists, that's your vertebrae. He knew these things. I'm sure he knew them. When you listen to his lessons, you see how many different fields he was operating in. And he dropped it on a man with a 3rd grade education, but whose soul was so sensitive that he began to figure those things out for himself also. And his language began to change. Because he was helping to evolve us up above the emotionalized ego and the issues that the ego provided for us. Now, in conclusion, what are the steps necessary to upgrade the human intellect from egocentric existence into true human existence as Allah outlines it in the level or on the level of what is called al-insan, that was created fi asari taqweem, in the most excellent design. The ego is not in the most excellent design, but your moral and rational thinking is.